Cool. So we are live here for a real, raw, and related conversation with Athena Moberg. So excited to have this conversation with Athena. She's part of my online community, Love Food, Love Life, where we take a look at what's going on behind the scenes in our relationship to food. And so Athena here she's a real person, a real woman, not necessarily someone that you have to think, oh, put up on a pedestal, she's got it all figured out, but she's going to open up and get raw and share with us about her relationship with food. And just to give a little bit of a quick background about Athena, Athena, in my opinion, awesome woman, wears loads of different hats, everything from business coaching and could sort out your WordPress website to working one-on-one with women who have survived childhood sex abuse, single moms, the whole gamut, crazy stuff, hosts a radio show, really, really cool. And today we're going to get the privilege of getting behind the scenes a little bit with Athena and hearing about her story with food. So Athena, is there anything you want to add to that about what you're up to these days, why you're here, what you're about?
No, that was a really wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm just excited, and I was really grateful that we got to connect and talk and just be real. And, we're just two girls hanging out and, definitely don't have anything figured out. I'm just, I'm grateful to be in the place that I'm at where I'm hungry to grow as a person, business-wise, professionally and personally. I just, want to continue down the path I'm on and help as many people along the way as I possibly can.
Cool. When I think by us having this conversation, I really believe that women coming together, two are better than one. We talk about what's going on. Like we were just chatting before we went live. Don't keep things silent. And when we're having a conversation, that in of itself can help each other. So I want to thank you for being willing to open up and share. I know it can be
You're welcome.
sometimes. And I think, I firmly believe I wouldn't be having this conversation if I didn't believe it's going to help. So we can stand firm on that. So what I thought I'd do, Athena, is I have a few questions for you. I know we've got some listeners live. Guys, if you're listening and you have questions, there should be a Q&A function. And so if you just type a question, I should see it. If you get the sense I'm not seeing your questions, it could just be, user error on my side. So connect in on Facebook as well. I'll check in periodically with that. But I want this to be as helpful for you listening. So it doesn't have to be just the questions I have. You guys this is meant to be community. So jump in there. But to kick it off, I will ask you some questions, Athena. And where I want to start is actually not about the food just yet. Because as you know, my take on things is that basically our relationship to food is reflecting what's going on in our relationship to life. And so to really understand what's going on with food, it's good to take a step back and see what's going on in the rest of our life and how that story impacts our relationship to food. So I'd love to start there with you. And just kind of, if you could just share and give us a picture of your story, the places of it that has impacted you with food the most.
Wow, that's kind of a loaded question. I also agree, being a member of your community, Love Food, Love Life, I do know that the way that we respond to food in our lives, whether we're using it as a coping mechanism, something we can control, it definitely does, like you said, it doesn't start with the food. The farthest thing I can remember back when I was growing up, I know maybe some of our viewers and listeners are not familiar with my story. I grew up in just what I thought was just a normal middle-class family. I didn't really know anything different. I led a pretty isolated life. My parents are hippies and got married in California, moved back to Ohio where I was born. We moved back to California again, and they just were hippies. They were not ready to have a kid, not ready for life, not ready for anything. They're in their 20s and 30s just trying to figure life out. And the result of them just being young and not very equipped for life was this drugs, alcohol, apathy. I think, like I've mentioned before, I think drugs, alcohol, and apathy are pretty much a deadly combo for horrible things to perpetuate. So, with that being said, there wasn't always food in the house, and I got told at a very young age that I would never know what it was like to be hungry, and I was lucky to have the life I had. So, I took that as the gospel truth, and if food was spoiled or if it had, ants or bugs or whatever, you just did whatever you needed to do if you were hungry. So
Wow.
I know that that's repulsive to some people, but that's the only reality I knew. I was 5, 6, 7 years old. What do you know?
Yeah.
So um, I often got made fun of when my mom married, I think it was her third husband. He had some daughters, and I know that they're just responding to kind of the environment that they were in. It's not that they had any malice toward me personally, probably, but um, I had family members there at the house that would make fun of me when there would actually be food. I would hurry and I would eat very, very fast, and they
Mm,
would often make grunting sounds like a pig to make fun
wow.
of the way I was eating because I was so hungry, and I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to do certain things. I did the best I could, but there wasn't always enough food. And so um, I was sort of at the mercy of that. And I was told, again, from a very young age, that I was lucky to have the life I had, that I would never know poverty or hunger the way that my parents knew it. They're both from families of 7 children. So I do believe that statement to be true to this day, but it doesn't mean that the way I was raised and the food that was given to me that was sometimes not healthy, or it could have been fast food, or it was spoiled, or there wasn't enough of it, or it had bugs, or whatever it was, that doesn't
Yeah.
make that okay. I mean, that's like saying, oh, you were only raped once. Well, I was raped 5 times. So clearly my life is worse than yours because I was sexually violated 5 times and you were only sexually violated once. I mean, it's like a preposterous statement when you look at it in that frame of reference. So to say that just because I didn't have 6 brothers and sisters and that I wasn't as hungry as they were when they were little, and that was their
Mm,
excuse for not having enough food, to me that's kind of a cop out, and it's not acceptable, and it's still it was the beginning of my relationship with food and the beginning of eating disorder, the beginning of control, the beginning of the end of me being completely suicidal and
wow.
anorexic and bulimic and everything else. So I know it's kind of a roundabout long answer to your question, but just want to be as real as possible so people know, like, it doesn't just start when you're 15 and decide to go on Slim Fast. Like, that's not when it
Yeah.
starts.
You shared, yeah. Well, thank you, because I think that that's the whole point. And I love what you said about where, just because, well, using the example, just because I was only sexually violated once and you were 5 doesn't make it that, the person who had it more times was that their issue was worse or anything. And and I think sometimes, um, I put myself in this, is I can say, oh, well, my eating disorder wasn't bad enough. Or, you might be able to say, oh, well, I didn't have it as bad as that person. So maybe what was going on with me wasn't that big of a deal. And I love what you're putting out there. It's like, no, it is a big deal. Whatever happened to you, like, you're allowed to say that was a big deal and that had an
It
impact.
was a
Doesn't
big
matter what
deal.
happened to the person. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every person lives a different path, and if you use that mentality in any other, that would be like saying, well, only one of your family members was murdered, and I had 2 family members murdered, so clearly my problem is worse than yours. No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but hunger, murder, thirst, sexual abuse, whatever, you name it, if it happens, it happens. Abuse is abuse is abuse is abuse is abuse. It doesn't matter what flavor of abuse it is or how often it happened. If you don't feed your kids, healthy food and prepare them for the future, that's wrong. If you don't
Yeah.
protect them from predators, that's wrong. If you don't equip them with the life skills they need to take care of themselves, with basic grooming skills, or how to balance a checkbook, or how to open up a bank account, or how to get a credit card, or what not to do, what to do, how to stay safe, I'm sorry, but there's no sliding scale for your job as a parent. Your job as a parent is
Yeah.
to effectively raise a child to be equipped to live a healthy life filled with healthy choices and healthy relationships. And if you didn't do that, which none of us do it perfectly, I'm a parent and I screwed up a lot. The difference is when you own it and you ask your kids for forgiveness and you just say, wow, I really screwed up. I hope that you'll forgive me for that someday because it was wrong. You deserved better. To own it
Yeah.
like that, that's the difference. To have that conversation and not make jokes about it, that's the difference. To
Yeah.
acknowledge someone's pain and acknowledge that someone could be struggling with something, whether it's their grades or their relationships or being picked on at school, to acknowledge it and put a voice to it and make it a topic of conversation that's safe to have, that makes a difference. That is the difference that I had in my family with my son while raising him, the difference that I didn't have when I was being raised by my family. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I know that that's a really black and white line, and I'm sort of drawing it in the sand, and I'm saying that's it. And again, that's just my opinion. I'm one person in this entire world of billions of people. So,
But I think you hit on something is that what you're talking about is having that empathy to someone that you can say, you're like you said, acknowledge the pain and not just try to brush it over or sweep it under the carpet or laugh
yeah,
along with. So
yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit more about what you shared of saying that at a time where there were members of a family where they would see you running to the food because you were afraid that it wouldn't be there or whatever, and basically making fun of your actions and, like you said, making that grunting noises. Can you talk a little bit more and share what the impact of that was you? Because I can imagine if that was me, I'd be carrying that still with me. So can you share a little bit
Oh,
more about
yeah.
that?
Well, that kind of stuff doesn't go away. You nailed it absolutely right. And I talked about this a little bit on a podcast I got interviewed on. I think it was like 3 weeks ago or so. It was called The Grass Gets Greener. And the host, Melissa, she talks a little bit about her podcast is about bullying. So I'm going to take exactly the question you just said, and I want to let people know that even though I survived horrific abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, you name it, every flavor of abuse, the bullying, which the being made fun of for eating was a
Mm,
huge part of the bullying. Those are the things I still carry around with me. I'm 41 years old. And if my husband to this day only puts one pizza on my plate and he takes two, I'm taken back to that time when I wanted two pieces of pizza and I got made fun of for wanting two pieces of pizza and I got people yelling grunting sounds at me and making fun of me because of the way I was eating. It's not, I mean, it's a trigger for me. It is a trigger for me.
yeah.
There are, I'm not saying, oh, I'm such a victim, poor me, like with a victim mentality. No, not at all. On the contrary, I'm saying, wow, you know what? I acknowledge that that's still a trigger in my life and that I still use food to cope with certain things. And I still, um, I think a lot of times what people don't understand here, I'm going to talk with my hands a little bit here.
Cool. Love it.
What people don't understand is that when you are raised in an environment where there is lack, you are not at a young age capable to imagine plenty. You're living in lack. You're a child. You have child thinking. You can't imagine plenty if you're living in lack. So, what does that mean? So, if I'm 7 years old and I'm used to not having a lot of food in the house, and they order a pizza to be delivered, and I smell the pizza, and I'm excited to put two pieces on my plate really, really fast because I want to make sure that I'm going to have two pieces of pizza. I want two pieces of that damn pizza. Why? Because I'm
Yeah.
hungry. Because I haven't had it in a long, long time. Because I've been hungry since I was 4. Like, like that's
Yeah.
you're a child at that moment. You can't imagine, oh, yeah, well, they're going to go grocery shopping tomorrow and there's going to be food in the fridge and whatever. So that being said, I'm an adult and I still have those types of issues. If I still have a mentality of lack when it comes to certain things in my life, food being one of them. I have to intentionally remind myself out loud, I live in a big, beautiful house. My husband goes grocery shopping. We go to Costco together. We have a pantry that's full of food. Our refrigerator's full of food. I just made a delicious dinner. We have left. I have to literally remind myself of these things because it doesn't come naturally to me. My natural way of thinking is not that there is plenty. It's
Mm.
that there's lack, and I want to make sure that there's enough for me for later. Like, that's just the way my mind thinks. That's my relationship with food. And my anorexia didn't begin until probably my sophomore year in high school. And I just knew that I looked different than the other girls. Like, they were all very, very tall and thin and sort of lanky and beautiful and like just perfect and skinny, and they could wear anything. And I was curvy. I've been
Mm.
curvy since I was 7. Like, I've had curves since I was 7. I've always had, a JLo booty. I've always had hips. Just, I mean, and you don't know that that's okay, and that, that's going to be in about 30 years. So not to worry about it, right?
Keep that
I
JLo
got
booty
made.
for yeah.
I mean, I got made fun of for my eyebrows. You can't tell because I've plucked the heck out of them my whole life. Now they just don't grow any thicker than this. But I had Brooke Shields eyebrows. My lips are big. Like, I got made fun of because of my lips. And it all goes back to food. And I know it's ridiculous for me to say that the whole eyebrow thing and the lip thing and the body thing goes back to food, but it does.
So
Like,
tell me more about that because that's really interesting.
well, okay, if you're a child and you're noticing that you look different than everyone else and you're leading sort of an isolated life because, when you live in an abusive situation and I wasn't really allowed to go to other people's houses very much or go to
Okay.
birthday parties or whatever. So I'm seeing myself different. I look different than those girls. I want to make myself look like those girls. So I decided to starve myself. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to have Slim Fast and I'm going to lose weight. It says on the TV commercial that you can lose up to 3 pounds a week. Like, that's
Yeah.
all I knew. I was all about it. I'm like, I'm going to save up my money. I literally would, my uncle worked for a candy company and he brought us all kinds of candy and gum and stuff. I would sell Now and Laters and Bubblicious gum at school for money to buy Slim Fast. I was like a little entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, I got all the candy and gum for free. I sold it for a profit. I bought Slim Fast. Problem solved. Like, that's what I wanted to do. And but it was never enough. I was never thin enough.
Yeah.
And then I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart. By the time I was, 19, I was divorced single mother. And I was told by very well-meaning loved ones or whatever that no one was ever really going to want a teenage single mother. Like, so I was
Mm.
convinced that I was used up, never to be loved again. So what did I do? I wanted to control the one thing I could control, my body. I wanted to get skinny. So
Yeah.
I began abusing laxatives. I was bulimic. I didn't have the courage to go throw up like those other girls that were throwing up. That took courage. No, what did I do? I took the easy way out. I sold stuff, got money, and bought laxatives. Took laxatives with every ounce of food I ate. I never kept nourishment in my body. If I
Mm.
ate a sandwich, I ate laxatives. If I drank milk, I ate laxatives. I only allowed myself to have non-fat milk, non-fat mayonnaise, and low-fat bread and non-fat turkey. And that was what I would eat. I would have Slim Fast. I would have turkey sandwiches that were non-fat. I would drink chocolate milk that was non-fat with Hershey syrup that doesn't have any fat in it. I was
Mm.
obsessive about it. And then I would eat all that and drink all that, and I would take it with laxatives. And I was so excited. I'm like, I am seeing results. This is awesome. Look at me. My clothes are baggy. And people started to notice that I was getting skinny. And then I was self-conscious by the fact that I was skinny, so I would wear baggier clothes and I would hide and I would sneak. I started
Yeah.
sneaking. I would sneak food, sneak laxatives, sneak everything. I started sneaking. And all of it is just so sick. It's just that I had that addict mentality and I didn't know that that's what it was. I honestly just thought that I was just trying to be like everybody else and that's what I was supposed to do. And
Yeah.
I've never even talked about this publicly. This is the first time I've ever talked about it. And I have so many friends and other entrepreneurs and people that I look up to that have been very transparent about their eating disorders. And I've always just been so ashamed and so shy about it. And I honestly thought, well, gosh, who would want to hear about that? And then all of a sudden I become an advocate for abuse survivors and I'm like, oh, well, okay. And then I get this opportunity to talk about my relationship with food. So, I mean, it's obvious that it's all linked together. I was self-conscious about my lips. I was self-conscious about my eyebrows. I was self-conscious about my body. How did I cope with it all? I ate and then I binged, or I binged and then I
Yeah.
purged. So
Yeah.
it's just
Well,
a
and
vicious
the thing that
cycle.
you what you said, so much of that was a reflection of my story as well. And I don't want to get too much into mine because this is about you, but I will share this, like what you were saying.
Oh, I'd like about you too.
But of feeling different, I that 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 feeling different is becoming more and more apparent to me the older I get, and I'm kind of able to understand and process more. But I also felt very, very different from people in my family. From I had a cousin who was like stick thin. She was 2 months older than me, and she was stick thin. We grew up together, and when I look at pictures now, I can see that I was a skinny kid. But then I was the chubby one comparatively.
Yeah,
And then and then in high school, again, it was, wanting to look like everybody else, to fit in, to be accepted, to not feel different anymore. I think it goes back to that love and connection that we all desire too. And exactly
yeah,
like you said, when you think, well, then how can I be accepted? I can change my body. Ooh, how can I do that? Oh, food and exercise. For me, it was food and exercise. Um,
yeah.
so that that trend, yeah, I think that's a really common one, of how we can, how do we change ourselves? Food becomes a way. So, and like everything you said, the, well, I did do the, I did do the vomiting. I didn't do the laxatives so much. That didn't really work for me. I did do the vomiting. So
I
I
was
guess to
afraid to
do with,
vomit. I was afraid. I was seriously afraid. I tried it. I tried.
yeah.
I did.
Well,
But
I
I was
I,
afraid.
yeah, for me, I mean, I can't believe we're having this conversation, but I felt more comfortable. I guess it's that control thing too. Force it back up as opposed to, you never know when you're going to have to run to the toilet. So it was more in
Yeah.
control with the vomiting. Um, but there's something you said I wanted to ask you about. You were saying when you were younger, there was that element of scarcity. So food wasn't available to you. And so there was that desire when it was, you want it because you don't know when you're going to have it next. But then when you were saying going into that anorexic phase, then it was obviously restricting the food. So for yourself, do you reconcile that to say, how did you go from wanting the food to then consciously eliminating it and being very careful about what you were eating?
Um, your question cut out a little bit in my headphones, but I think I know what you asked. You're asking at what point did it shift from not being enough and me wanting it to transitioning into sort of controlling it
Yeah.
and keeping it back? Okay,
Yeah.
so very simple in my mind as a girl when I was younger, my desire to be thin and my desire to be desirable because I thought that if I was thin that I wouldn't be unwanted anymore and
Yeah.
used up. Teenage single mom, whatever, overweight, got a baby, whatever. Like my desire to be thin outweighed my desire to eat food. Like
Okay.
I mentally just I was like, okay, what's the priority here? Is the priority to eat food that I never had before? Is the priority to look better? I need to look better if I'm ever going to land myself another husband because my kid can't grow up without a dad. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds lame when I say it like that or whatever, but I mean, you're in like I only knew how to have survival mode. I mean, survival mode is what I grew up in. It was looking back on it, what I thought was normal at the time was very, very scary. There was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of police activity. There was a lot of domestic violence going on in my house. I mean, the cops were there every week, like several times a week sometimes.
Wow.
There was, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of pornography. I thought that is how everyone was raised. I thought that's how everyone lived life. I didn't know that it was different until I was much older.
Mm.
And I feel foolish for saying that now because, I'm an adult and it's like, hello, yeah, you were a teenager, you should have known better. But when that's all you know, I mean, I talked about this with on our live broadcast last week, and that's like, if you have a little girl and you tell her to go out and pick the flowers, but don't pick the purple ones because they're dangerous and they have thorns on them, but you never taught that little girl what purple looked like, you
Mm.
set her up to fail. you set that little girl up to fail. She's going to go out and she's going to stare at that field of flowers, and she's going to be scared shitless and not know, well, what if I touch a purple flower? Maybe I should just not touch any of the flowers. Oh my gosh. And then you're just
Yeah.
paralyzed because you're like, well, I was told to do this, but I don't really know what this means. And then you're like afraid to ask. And so anyway, I coping by eating food that I didn't know I was going to have was a big deal, and it was a way of life for me. But when
Mm.
I thought I figured out the secret sauce of life, and that was I needed to look desirable if I was going to live a life that was going to be healthy, then I just decided to obsess on that. And I did. I exercised and I controlled food and whatever. And, the turning point for me, I know you even asked me about the turning point, but I didn't realize that I was sick and that
Mm.
something was wrong with me until my son was 3 years old and it was Mother's Day and my dad took us out to eat at Red Lobster. I decided I was going to allow myself to eat a normal meal without taking laxatives. You want to know what
Mm.
happened? I
Tell
I
me.
was I was doubled over and I had to be carried to the car
Because you had eaten.
because I had eaten
Wow.
a meal, one meal, one.
Yeah.
It, I mean, on the outside, we had just gone to Olin Mills and taken a family photograph. My son was dressed up so cute, little 3-year-old boy with his little bow tie and everything, and I was dressed in this really pretty flowered dress, and I had had my hair just so, and my dad decided to take me out for Mother's Day, and my son was there. We had a great time. We colored with the crayons on the little placemat, the whole deal,
Yeah.
right? I had snow crab legs. I was so
Yeah.
excited to eat snow crab legs. I'd never even had snow crab legs before. Good Lord. And what happened? I was so sick because I didn't take
Yeah.
laxatives with my meal. So I didn't even know I was sick until then, and I never reached out for professional help. I never even talked about it probably until just now. So, I mean,
That's incredible. I'm honored to be able to hear this firsthand and first time. This is this
it's
is so
scary.
freaking
I just,
cool.
I hope someone hears this and goes, oh yeah, I've been doing that. I don't want to end up like that. I better stop. I
Yeah.
hope that's what happens.
So tell me, what did happen after that, right? So you had this like aha moment and you're like, what the hell? This isn't normal or whatever kind of went through your head. But it, that is probably what, like 20 something years ago. Like, I guess can you take us from that point to where you are now?
Okay. Um,
20 years and 20 seconds.
right? Let's do it. So I made a choice that I was going to switch jobs at that point because I had convinced myself that I worked at a job purposefully. I literally chose that job because it was a receptionist position that was right by the bathroom so that I could facilitate
Mm,
my eating disorder. So I
wow.
wanted to set myself up for, I know, right? Wow, like the level of sick that is was me. So I decided to change my job. I got a job working at a hotel, learned all about the hospitality industry, and I knew I was going to have to be on stage, on at all
Yeah.
times. And so that wasn't going to be anything that I could, it wasn't going to facilitate my eating disorder. So I
Mm,
decided to just go back to doing what I knew, and that was eating very, 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 very little and exercising. And I would take the stairs instead of the elevator, and I was obsessive. And I mean, eating disorders are a mental disorder. I have a mental disorder. It's not like you just heal overnight. When you think of
mm,
yourself as fat no matter what, that's a problem in the mind, not the body. When you look in the mirror and
yeah.
you hate what you see, that's a problem in the mind, not the body. But I didn't know that. I just knew that I had to stay thin if I was ever going to have a dad for my son someday. And that was my goal. I just wanted him to have a normal life. So I got a job at a hotel. It was very different hours. I worked in the evenings, like overnight, and so um, I had a roommate situation going on, and so when I would come home, my son, I would get a couple hours sleep. My son would wake up, and we would go to the beach all day, every day. We would go to Huntington Beach, and we would sit
Okay.
by the lifeguard tower, and we would play in the sand, and then it would be time for us to leave, go home, get ready, go to work, rinse, repeat, do it over again. I kept myself busy so that I didn't have to worry about food. Busyness was my new thing. Busyness was my
Yeah.
new thing. First it was laxatives, then it was food, and then it was busyness. I just kept it busy, kept it busy. That's all I did. That's all I knew how to do. And I did that for a few years. I did pretty good. And I ended up moving to Orange County, and then I ended up getting my very first corporate job. And I continued to obsess about food and take the stairs and, obsess in different ways. And I wasn't very healthy. I wasn't healthy in my mind. And I didn't know
Mm,
that it was a mind problem. I thought it was a body problem.
yeah. You said a couple things there again that reflects part of my story, but one of the things that I think I'm going to kind of read between the lines a little bit and tell me if I'm wrong, but you were saying that incident when you were at Red Lobster and like, oh my goodness, I've got a problem because I can't eat a normal meal without feeling sick because that was so not what your that wasn't your eating pattern. And when you juxtapose that against what you said looked like a completely normal life from the outside, right? So I just took family photos with my kid. Um, you know, on the outside, everything looks great, but meanwhile, on the inside, it's like a completely different picture. Um, and to me, the word inauthenticity comes to mind, where it's like all of a sudden realizing that your life isn't one continuous thing. There's like two different things going on that are like total opposite of each other. And that, like I said, I'm kind of putting words in your mouth, but that was a big thing for me of having this perfect kind of looking life on the outside, great job, friends, the city life, all this kind of stuff. But meanwhile, and I think you asked me this, what was the turning point for me? A vivid memory. It was about 2 o'clock on a Saturday. I was planning to meet my family on Staten Island, and I had my head over the toilet bowl. I was making myself sick in the middle of the day on a Saturday, which was like the complete opposite of what my normal routine was, nighttime binging, basically the time of day thing, and during the week and not the weekend. And it was like, holy crap, now I'm going to get on the bus and the ferry and go see my family and pretend that everything's okay when I've just had my head over the toilet bowl. And it's like that inauthenticity that's like a massive wake up call. So I don't know, that really spoke to me when you shared that with me. Um,
Yeah, I I have to be honest and say I didn't look at it that way then. I
mhm.
Again, I feel like I was in survival mode. I wasn't not in survival mode until I moved to Hawaii like 8 years ago. So I
Okay.
didn't literally have that aha that you had of the duplicity and the inauthenticity. I didn't have those realizations until like maybe 10, 9, 8 years ago. Um,
Hmm.
I am I am so overtly passionate about living an authentic life that my thoughts and my words and my actions are all in line with one another. My desires and my my prayers and my actions and my intentions are all in alignment with who I really am and what I'm about. I'm like overtly passionate about that. It's something that I um, think about and I am intentional about on a daily basis. And I'm almost to the point where I just have such a peace that washes over me now that I go, wow, I'm not living this double life of trying to survive on the inside and being completely calm on the outside. Everything is
Yeah.
now finally in alignment. But I didn't realize that that's what was going on for me because I was so sick. I was really
Mm.
so sick. And it wasn't until a family member of mine needed to go to counseling because of a situation that had happened and I started studying personal and professional development, and that was back in the year 2000, so 15 years ago. And even then, it took me 5 years to figure out that I had some deep issues. I still have new memories, probably once a week, that are stuff I thought that I had already worked through, and I'm
Mm.
realizing it and remembering it for the first time, or re-remembering it for like what
Yeah.
I completely forgot about. But the duplicity that you describe of, wow, here I am with my head over the toilet bowl, and I'm going to go hop on a ferry and hang out with mom and pop and have ice cream. It's like I didn't have that type of realization at all. It didn't even cross my mind. It was like, I just need to make it through today. I want to make sure that I am very careful about what I eat today. I want to make sure that I do everything I possibly can. I was just so obsessed, so
Mm.
sick that I never even had that moment of clarity that you talked about.
Yeah.
I didn't even have that. I think the only thing that made me stop was necessity. I knew that if I kept it up, my insides were going to get rotted out, and that my son wasn't going to have a mom or a dad. And then
Yeah.
what would I do? I'd be like a complete piece of shit. Really? Is that what you did? You left your kid by himself because he doesn't have a relationship with his dad right now, and all he has is you, and you're gonna self-destruct. Come on, get it together, Athena. What's your problem? I mean,
Mm.
I motivated myself with shame. Shame was my motivator. What do you think you're doing? Come on, get it together. Get it together. That was where I
So
was at. I didn't realize any of it. I really didn't realize it until about 10
yeah.
years ago.
And when you say that, I'm trying to think. I'm not sure. I couldn't hand on my heart say I realized it then. I can realize it now looking back. To be honest, I can't tell you exactly what I was feeling then, but that memory is quite vivid, and that's what it brings up for me.
Hmm.
But I want to ask you something about what you just said about sort of that shaming of self, right? Say like, come on, get it together. What are you doing? Who do you think you are? This is crazy, all that kind of stuff. Because I think we we can beat ourselves up massively about our behaviors with food. Um, and I guess one of my goals is for ourselves to have more, I guess, love towards ourselves with our behaviors for food. Because if we can recognize that, there is other stuff going on and have empathy towards ourselves, that it doesn't excuse the behavior, but at least we're not adding to the shame and the guilt and the negativity that we already feel about ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
Um,
does. It does make
and
sense.
so,
Yeah, and I resonate with what you said about not knowing at the moment that that was happening, but in retrospect, you're able to recognize that that's what was really going on. I think that's similar for me, and I
yeah.
think it's a process. I think it's an unveiling. I think it's uncovering who you really are. There's so many layers to the onion. You just keep peeling and
Hmm.
peeling and peeling and peeling, and there are people out there that are watching right now or listening right now that are not committed to unpeeling the layers. They're just not, because it's too painful. You peel a
Mm.
layer and it's raw and it hurts and it sucks to look at and it's ugly. But unless we peel the layers, unless we're willing to go there, we're never going to grow. Not as a person, not as a family, as a society, as a country, as a culture. And I am fully and completely dedicated to that. I really am
Yeah.
interested in growing. I don't want to ever, ever, ever have my grandbabies watch this and go, yeah, but wow, grandma was really stagnant. Like, she wasn't really a type of person that wanted to grow. She was just happy living her little life. Like, God, I never want that to happen. I want them to know that if you really are committed to growing as a person, whether it be personally or professionally, that it's possible. You're the one that has to make the effort. And the peeling back the layers the way you and I are peeling them back right now, the way we're being intentional about going, okay, that was ugly, that was painful. Let's peel back another layer and see how ugly and painful it's going to get, because I really want to work on this. I really want to be the most amazing, authentic person I can possibly be. So I don't know. I'm just grateful for that, for
Yeah.
the era that we live in, where we have access to technology and social media. We can actually reach people all over the world with an encouragement. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. I sort of segued, but I'll go back on topic now.
Well, that's cool. I love what you said that I want to reiterate is that it is a decision, right? You don't just like all of a sudden wake up one day and, oh, I'm better. It's a conscious choice, and it's lived out by daily actions. And yeah, a lot of times it sucks. It's like the blood, sweat, and tears of it. And even when you think, oh, I got over it, you can realize, like you say, there's that next layer. And sometimes they come rapidly after each other, and sometimes there's a lot of space in between them. But like you said, it's a choice that when it faces you, you're like, okay, here we go again. I do think
Yeah.
that each time it becomes slightly, I don't know if easier is the right word, but I guess you kind of know what you're in for, and so you're more prepared, I suppose, is a way to talk about it. But I want to go back to the what we were talking about is we can judge our behaviors with food and maybe approaching them with a little bit more empathy, and also get rid of the shame around the behaviors with food. And I was wondering if if you would be willing to share some memories that you have of what you've done with food that you kind of you have placed judgment to say that's disgusting, Athena, or I can't believe you did that, or whatever. And maybe just to, like, we both work in the shame fields of when you talk about it, when you break the silence, the shame isn't there. But just also for others to know that there's other people doing these behaviors, and maybe we don't have to judge it collectively, and we can release some of that shame collectively.
Yes, I think that's an excellent way to put it. I don't know if you're familiar with Jody Amen.
I'm not
Lives on the
actually,
East
no.
She lives on the East Coast. You should definitely check her out. You remind me a lot of her. So, well, she's an East Coaster. So,
Cool.
like, and she's a brunette, and she's beautiful, and she's authentic. You guys remind me of one another, actually. And you can go to jodyaman.com, JODIAMAN. And she
Cool.
is,
Thanks for that.
yeah, she's a therapist, and she deals a lot with people who struggle with different mental illnesses, whether it be, obsessive compulsive disorder or whatever. And she put out a really great video that I'm going to talk about right now because it addresses the exact question that you just posed right now, and that is having a little bit of self-compassion. And on the specific topic of eating and your behaviors with food and trying to not use shame as a motivator, the best way to intentionally practice self-compassion and to overcome the um, the instinct or the desire to control or to shame yourself, because we just subconsciously do it. We don't even realize we're doing it.
Mm.
If you are able at all to pause when you can tell that you're in the middle of one of those moments where you know that there's a certain food that you're going to eat that's going to trigger some sort of a binge, or that's going to make you feel a
Mm.
certain way, and it triggers you to a certain memory or whatever, if you can pause and make sure that you're intentional about when you're going to enjoy that meal, whether it's setting yourself a placemat with napkin and silverware and a dish, and not on the go, making sure that you're not on the go or just standing in your kitchen or whatever. Actually go to the trouble of making yourself like a really nice little um, environment to eat in, to
Mm.
enjoy. I have a spot over in my dining room that has this panoramic mountain and ocean view. And if I can find myself sometimes in a rush, or that I can tell that I'm just going to maybe overeat, or it's something I have a tendency that I might overeat at that time, I try to pause, and I try not to obsess over the fact that that's what I'm doing. Just give
Yeah.
myself some love and compassion. Pause, take a deep breath, and I'm a woman of faith. I pray my way through everything, and I am a firm believer that God is just helping me every moment of the day and getting me through all of these different layers that I'm going through right now. And I set myself a placemat, and I put a dish, and I take some time, and I've worked in five-star hotels and on club level lounges at Ritz-Carlton, and like I know what it's like to put out something nice for someone that
Yeah.
is special, that is fancy, formal, intentionally wanting to pamper someone because they're worth it. Deep down on all of the eating stuff that you and I are discussing right now is a sense that we're not worth it.
Mm.
There's an unworthiness that goes along with eating disorders that is deeper than deep. And so if I disrupt that cycle, and I disrupt that system where I would normally just grab a bite super quick and go back to work,
Mm.
knowing that that's going to trigger something, and I pause and I sort of breathe and just set myself a placemat with a dish and set up something nice because I'm worth it, and that I eat less, I'm not stressed, I don't overeat, and I end up being grateful for it later. I just interrupt the cycle, and I don't shame myself for feeling those feelings or thinking those thoughts.
Yeah.
I try to interrupt it. And that's been a huge, besides prayer, that's what gets me through most of it, honestly, is doing something different than I would normally do. I work with a health and fitness coach. I was working a lot with her a year or so ago, but I had a goal for every week, and like one of my main goals was to not stand, eat something super quick, and go back to work since I work from home. set myself a
Yeah.
that, and treat it like it's something special because I'm worth it.
Yeah.
And that has disrupted my abusive eating cycle and the way that I think about food and the way I behave and the level of self-compassion that I practice with myself. So
That's a
prayer and
great tip.
interrupting the cycle.
Yeah, no, that's a great. It's like that intentionality, and I love that it's even beyond the intentionality a bit, but it's saying I am worth it, and this is like a gift to myself, and so it totally counteracts the punishing that we can do with food or the comforting because the deep cause is that, like you said, we're not worth it, and so it totally smacks that in the face and says, "Sorry, I am worth it. I'm going to sit here and
Yeah.
just sit with my food." Yeah. Could
Mm-hmm.
you share with us some of the behaviors with food that you have had, either present day in the past, um, that maybe there is shame around, or you're not proud of, or that it's kind of like, oh, that wasn't cool, but you can kind of get past that and move beyond that.
I have a perfect example. Um, I absolutely love cereal. I love breakfast cereal. I just I just do. I wasn't allowed to have like good breakfast cereal growing up because it was expensive.
Hmm.
Um, but I love a bowl of cereal, and I know that previously throughout my life, if I wanted to just sit and have a bowl of cereal for dinner, that there was some shame around that for some reason because that wasn't the socially acceptable norm that normally you
Yeah.
prepare a dinner, it's the evening meal, blah blah blah, you know. um, Again, it's those expectations that are piled on us by whether it's society or family members or very well-meaning loved ones. But I've recently been able to just be like, you know what, I'm going to have a bowl of Special K for dinner, and that's what I want, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't come naturally. I mean, these types of trivial things probably sound like drivel to some people, but they're really not. These are real big issues for some people that have struggled with food their entire life. And society's expectations upon us are, you have a meat, you have a starch, you have a vegetable, you sit down at a certain time, etc. Um, all these waves of shame came back on me when I started dating my husband. I started dating him in 2010, and he has the most, like, if my childhood was dysfunctional, he had the most functional childhood. If my childhood was, you know um, horrific because of the pornography and abuse and drugs and alcohol and police activity and all of that, picture Leave It to Beaver. And that's my husband's upbringing. He has an older brother and a younger sister, and his parents have been married for 65 years, and they always ate dinner at the same time every night. And and that's not what I grew up with. We didn't eat at the same table, like not on a regular basis. We didn't. So
Yeah.
um, when I would not want to eat a lot, or if I wanted to just, have vegetables or whatever, when I was trying to develop a relationship with my in-laws and I wanted them to like me, and I wanted to, I knew it was important for my husband that his parents get to know me, because
Sure.
he
Yeah.
intended on proposing to me. So I throughout everything that I had, all the progress that I had made with regards to food, and I allowed myself to move into people pleaser mode and eat whatever it is they put on my plate,
Mm.
gravy, meat, whatever, and I didn't object. I hated myself for it later. I called my husband, boyfriend at the time, husband now, and I was like, "You don't understand. You're going to have a fat wife. Like, you don't understand. I've struggled with food my entire life. I have been a vegetarian for a year and a half. I don't eat that much. I and you want me to come over for dinner, but they keep putting food on my plate." And then, it was just so hard for me. I'm like, "You don't understand. This is a really big deal." And
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." And like, he had no idea, and he didn't really know how to respond. And again, they don't ever talk about stuff like that. And it's like sweeping under the rug. It doesn't exist. It was difficult for me to get past that.
Mm.
But we've been married almost 4 years now. Yeah, we're going to celebrate our fourth wedding anniversary. So
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm able, just recently, as I've been more intentional about my mental, physical, emotional health, spiritual health, really just wanting to have a very well balanced life. Like I said, have everything be in alignment, everything be very authentic, my thoughts, my words, my actions, my intentions, all of that. Recently, I've been able to say, I don't think I want to eat what you guys are eating. I think I'm probably going to eat something else. And, if we're around family or whatever. And it's hard, but it's huge progress for me. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to call it a win.
Good. I'm going to celebrate that win with you. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool.
It's not
So
easy.
how,
It's not easy.
how
It's hard.
no, no, it's not. No. And I think it, like you say, it's that every, I think it goes back to what we were talking about layers, is that through life we get into new situations, and those each situation will pull out in us what we need to address then, right? And so that's sort of like where you were at, and okay, I'm not going to people please, even though they're my potential future family when it comes to food, and I'm going to learn through that, and then there'll be a new experience with new people or environments, and then there'll be something that comes out against learn. I was sharing with you and with the community, spending time with my family, it brought up stuff all over again. It felt like I felt 20 years ago, and it's like, okay, time to address things now because I didn't
Yeah.
address them then. So
I,
yeah.
I want to I want to address something you just shared right now that was so awesome about family. Can I rewind a little bit and share
Yeah, yeah,
something? And
yeah.
I haven't really thought it all through, so just bear with me. Okay,
Sure.
so I'm going to walk through this. So I have great intentions for my food intake. I have great intentions for my body. I'm making healthy decisions. I want to be in alignment with myself and with my core beliefs, right? And I'm cruising
Mhm.
along and I'm doing really, really, really good. Then I get around family and the temptation of the food that they're serving that is in plenty, not lack, all of a sudden triggers me, and knowing that they're all going to eat that, I have this fight going on the inside of me. Like, well, I've been doing so good, and I'm losing weight, and I've been really good like with my food. I've been in a really good place, but like they're like, rather than ruffle the feathers of the family members that are going to be eating a certain, like, I might as well just have it, because and then I go into that old thinking of it might
Mhm.
not be there. It might not be
Yeah.
there. It might not be
Yeah.
there.
And then the
So then
family might not be there
the
if you don't
family might
feed
not
them.
be there. So do I
Yeah.
want the memory that we had here at the lake for this holiday to be about how I didn't eat what everybody else ate? Or do, like, I must be being selfish. What's wrong with you, Athena? And then there's the shame. And then that triggers the people pleaser mentality. Well, I just don't want to make any waves. I'm going to do whatever they want. And then that facilitates the, well, and plus, like, it's delicious food, and when are you going to have lobster again? Like, they're serving
Yeah.
lobster. Well, like, you might as well enjoy that. Like, so there's just all these voices. And I know that people out there that have never struggled with an eating disorder and that don't have any type of thing like that in their family are thinking, wow, this chick is bonkers. But I'm here to tell you that it's not just me. Like, there's all these voices. There's the, I really want to, I'm doing so good. I have been making healthy choices and I feel really good about myself. But wait, I don't want to upset anybody. I want to eat what they want me to eat. And I don't want to say anything because I don't want that to be what they remember. What if they die? They're in their 80s. What if this is the last thing they remember about me? I don't want that. Oh, but there's all this food, but I really shouldn't. But maybe I should. But wait, it's not going to be there. I mean,
Yeah.
all those things that I'm saying right now, like, that sounds like a lot and that sounds crazy to some people, but that's a day in the life. That's normal. Like, it doesn't just go away. It is daily, moment by moment, being intentional. What can I control in this moment right now? Oh, I can control nothing but my attitude and how I respond. Okay, I
Yeah.
made it through another moment. Like, that's
Yeah.
the reality, you know?
So what is life for you now with food? Because the story you were just sharing is pretty recent, like you said, in the past 4 years. So what are
hmm
your what is there to celebrate now? What challenges do you still have?
So I think what I can celebrate, I'll celebrate my wins first.
Yeah.
And I'll share that I haven't been obsessive about Weight Watchers and counting points and is it going to be this diet or that diet or this diet or that diet. I haven't done that in a really long time. I
Cool.
also haven't binged or purged or anything like that in a very, very long time. I haven't bought laxatives in 20 years, and that feels good to say.
Cool.
um, almost 20 years, probably. No, probably, yeah, almost 20 years. So, you know, but then again, those being my wins, the things I still struggle with are the things I just shared, and that is the people pleaser mentality and that
Hmm.
expectation of what people think a meal should be. And, my husband and I love to entertain. We entertain a lot. We have friends over. We have friends that visit from the mainland and they come to Hawaii, and we have, you can't see it here. I'm in my kitchen, and there's a big
Oh,
island in
wow.
the middle of the kitchen. And we have the island, loaded with, whether my husband grills,
Mm.
we barbecue quite often, filet mignon or chicken or vegetables or whatever, and we make all very, very, very healthy food. That's a win. I'm eating very healthy food, and I have a husband that cares about my well-being. He cares that I take my vitamins every day. He cares that I have health insurance. He cares that I eat organic vegetables. He
Mm.
cares. That is a huge win. Knowing that you have somebody cheering you on and that cares about you and that wants what's best for you, that is a huge win. And a lot of people that have struggled with eating disorders don't have that type of support system in place. They just don't. So
Yeah.
those are huge wins for me. My things that are not wins are that, I still wish I was thinner. I still don't love it to look at myself in the mirror. Um, I still shame myself and have some self-loathing that I struggle with about how I damaged my insides 20 years ago with laxatives.
Mm.
Like, I know now that my body struggles because of what I did 20 years ago, and it wasn't
Yeah.
worth it. Was not worth it. So, I mean, that's the good and the bad of it.
Yeah.
Um,
You said something there that really struck home with me of, I stopped using the laxatives 20 years ago. That's a win, and that is totally a win. And then
Yay!
yeah. And I'm trying to I kind of lose count, but I think I stopped purging, what is it, 2000 we're in 2005 now. So the last time I purged was the last night I was in my apartment in New York City. I was moving to another apartment. It was August 2006. So 9.5 years, right? And so there's a huge time lapse between the where the behaviors can stop. But I think what I want people to understand is that just because the behaviors stop doesn't mean that, like you were saying before, the disordered thinking, or that the thinking, I don't even like the word disorder, I'll be honest with you. I just don't like it. But maybe that's my thing, or maybe there's truth in there. But the way that we're thinking and the way that we're trying to live our life as opposed to just owning it and living it, that is a long process. And that just because the behavior with food changes doesn't mean that everything else is automatically changed. And I think that's the part about the layers, that that part can keep going. But I think it's important. It's not even a but. It is important to recognize and celebrate the change in behavior, because even though it doesn't start with food, when you make the changes with food, it's then you're on the right path for all of the inner work then to happen. And so that you can allow that to happen because food isn't getting in the way anymore. So
yeah.
I just wanted to call that out there a bit, because I think it's a huge message that you touched on there.
Absolutely. And if you think about the word, I know that you were saying about disorder, and it is kind of a disturbing word, but like, I lack order in my thoughts.
Yeah.
My thoughts are out of order, and they're not in line with who I really am and who I want to be, because it all starts in our thought life. And if I think that I don't like what I look like in the mirror when I walk by, that perpetuates another thought, which perpetuates another thought. And so it all starts in our thoughts. And I wish that I thought differently. The only way that I can exercise that muscle of thinking differently about myself and about food is by intentionally doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to accidentally fall into right thinking and healthy thinking when I've spent a lifetime having struggles with my thought processes
Yeah.
and my thought life. So one of my favorite books that I've ever read is called Battlefield of the Mind by Joyce Meyer, and it's just so true. We are held captive by our thoughts
Mm.
unless we hold our thoughts captive. And eating disorders don't start by themselves. struggles with food don't start by themselves. They start probably most likely at a very, very, very young age, somewhere between the age of 7 and 13, and a lot can happen, especially in females.
Mm.
And I know that we haven't really discussed this off the air, and if I'm overstepping my bounds by the following what I'm about to say, then just let me know and I'll just back off. But um, the community of people that I am involved in on a regular basis, as you mentioned in my introduction, I have huge communities of people that are adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
Mm.
The the number is staggering of people that are adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse that struggle with eating disorders. It's like 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10
Wow.
people who struggle with eating disorders, or 8 out of 10 people that are adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse, either struggle with food or have some sort of food issues attached to that, because their
Yeah.
lives were so out of control. There were no healthy boundaries. There was nothing healthy going on in their life. They were violated in every way, including the most intimate way possible. So the thing that they could control the easiest in their life was their food intake or outtake, however you look at it.
Yeah.
And yours and my communities are very, very, very closely related. And I'm not saying that all the people that are in our awesome community of Love Food, Love Life are adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that they overlap, they
Yeah.
touch. And
Well,
because it's a control issue, it's all in your thought life.
yeah.
It starts in your thoughts.
And yes, and I'm glad you point that out because, like you said, when you break down the word disorder, that's exactly what it is. And I think what I don't like is the connotation that goes along with that. But we'll save that for another conversation. But
Absolutely.
what you just touched upon there in terms of the overlap in the communities, in terms of people who struggle with sexual abuse, and then also with eating disorders and food. One thing that I've noticed even in my own life is that food was always food was the most pain point for me. There's been many painful pain points, but that was the biggest one. That was the one that where it escalated the most. But once I was able to see past that, I also saw that I had problems in my sex life. I had problems in my money life. And I had problems in my relationship with people, which is very broad, but like you were saying about people pleasing, boundaries, codependency, all that kind of stuff. And so I think it goes back to exactly what you're saying, that it all starts here, and whatever avenue it finds its way out, it, it's the same thing. It's just manifesting itself in different ways. And
True.
for me,
Yes.
yeah, and for me, I guess I believe start with the most painful point because you will do the most work there, and then everything else will become easier to work through because you'll be so much further along.
Yeah.
Um, so
Sometimes I feel like that is a good way to tackle a really tough issue. Like how I forget what book it is now, but it was a business book that I read, and it talks about um, tackling, your biggest challenge of the day first thing in the morning. Like,
mm,
you know, eating the elephant first thing in the morning.
yeah.
But at the same time, in the, conversely, in the community of people that I'm actively involved with, not being able to reach our goals is such a source of shame, and not
Mm,
having some small wins at the beginning of the day or the beginning of the week can spiral downward for a lot of the people that I'm in community with that struggle with whether it's post-traumatic stress disorder, complex PTSD, which is what I struggle with, and
mm,
generalized anxiety disorder. I mean, there are a lot of really or even bipolar, borderline personality disorder, people that are really struggling with mental health. If they put too big of a goal in front of them um, and tackle the hardest thing first, if they don't reach the goal to the point that they wanted to reach the goal, they shame themselves and they end up spiraling downwards, and they sometimes fall back into an area of self-harm or
mm.
um, just whether it's suicidal tendencies or what have you. So I do love that, like tackle that thing first thing in the morning, the hardest part, or when you're thinking about your recovery, like what's the most painful pain point? I
Mm,
love that. I think that the only person that's going to know is you.
yeah.
You are your own best advocate. You are the one that knows your recovery inside and out. No one can set your goals for you and facilitate them for you. So if you know that you are the type of person that when they don't reach a goal goes into somewhat of maybe a depression or a shaming or a self-loathing or a discouragement, like just tragic, horrific discouragement, then maybe
Mm,
set yourself up for success and give yourself some smaller goals first, so that you can exercise that goal muscle and then tackle that painful pain point. But the only one that's going to know is you. Like each person's recovery is their own journey. And whether it's from codependency or boundaries or having, like you said, it's all connected with money issues, your sex life,
mm,
your food life, your job, your interpersonal relationships. It's all connected. And if you have goals in every area of your life that are attainable, that you know you can attain that goal, and you're setting yourself up for success, then that is just going to propel you into like the next stage of your recovery, to where you're able to, advocate for other people, help someone else. And then mentally and emotionally, you're in a place where you can be used and you can be a vessel of
mm,
change in the community or in our culture. But the only person that's going to know is that particular person. If like I work very well under pressure. I love when I get to go into a zone and tackle a huge project, and I know that I'm not going to stop unless I finish it. Like I'm a
yeah.
project person. But if I have something that's sort of like an ongoing, like a daily thing, it's like a little bit overwhelming for me. I kind of like big projects, get them done. Big projects, get them done. And which again, that has actually perpetuated some of my thought processes that are not as healthy, because our health is not something that's a one and done. You don't tackle your thought life or your food life or your money life or your relationship life one and done. Tackle it, it's done. It's an
Mm,
ongoing muscle that you have to exercise. And for people that are project people and that are not doing the little things in a big way type people, like my husband loves just doing little things in a big way every day, and he just plods along, and he's the most steady Eddie, awesome, supportive, incredible man I've ever met
it's
in
a
my
good
life.
team.
Yeah, he's really, really, really good for me. But at the same time, he gets so overwhelmed and paralyzed by a big project. And so I
Mm,
feel like God brought us together. So like if there's a big project, I can go, oh, I'm on that. Like
yeah.
consider it done.
Yeah.
I know that that was a little bit of a ramble, but to address your point of tackling that biggest pain point first, sometimes that is a great strategy. Sometimes that's an excellent strategy because you gain so much momentum and you're like, yes. But you have to really measure it and go, okay, is that attainable?
Yeah.
And if I don't reach that goal, how am I going to feel? Is it worth it? Okay, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
Like
No,
some
that's a great
self-talk.
point. And like you said, it's knowing yourself and knowing what do I need right now, and going back to that, being kind to yourself and letting yourself, yeah, just letting yourself be and do what's in front of you, and not beat yourself up for what you're not doing or what
Yeah.
you haven't done. So thanks for bringing that up. And I think yeah, I guess what I was drawing on is when I think of all the things that I have worked on in my life, food was always the biggest problem. So for me, it made sense to start there as opposed to trying to sort out money when I didn't know what was going on with food. But like you say,
Yeah.
everyone takes a different everyone takes a different journey. So thanks
But
for
that's
I love
good.
what
I
you
mean,
shared of
it's
yeah, I
unique.
love yeah, exactly. And I love what you shared of giving people permission, and I know we can't give other people permission, but creating that space to give ourselves permission to just do what we know is right for us, and
Yeah.
that there's not one way. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to wrap this up. It's just over the hour, and I know I love it that we've got two people listening in. From what I can tell, I'm just going to
Yay.
check the places that there's questions just to see if I'm missing any. I'm not the best technology person, so if you're listening and you do have a question and I'm not seeing it, I'm really, really sorry. Um, but I'm checking in three places and I don't see any. So I guess, Athena, my last question for you is just what hope you can offer to our listeners. What hope do you have for yourself? Like you said, it's a journey. We're not at the end yet. And is there anything else you want to end with?
Yeah. Well, I think the message of hope for anyone who's watching or listening is exactly what you just said. You said it all. This isn't the end of your journey. If you're not in a place right now where you feel good about your life or about your food life, your money life, your thought life, your family life, interpersonal relationships, your marriage, your sex life, there's always a choice that can be made. There's always one little step you can take that is in the right direction. And it doesn't have to be a big step or a big choice. You can literally just change a couple things about your thought life, and it will, if you stay in that direction, everything will turn around. And I know it feels super duper overwhelming sometimes. You're like, gosh, I'm struggling. Like I'm not doing good at work, and my husband and I are fighting, and my kids are on drugs, and I've already, declared bankruptcy, and I'm going to lose my car, and everything sucks. You don't understand. Like, this should be the last thing I'm worried about. But, you know, I I don't want to minimize what you're going through right now, if that's you, because what you're going through matters, and it's huge. And the message of hope I have for you is that no matter where you have been or where you're at right now or where you come from, there is, on the other side of your absolute lowest point, is your highest potential. You're going to reach your goal if you stay in the same direction. I can't say that enough times. Your highest potential is on the other side of your lowest point. And it sounds very cliche, when you get to the end of your rope, but or if you hit rock bottom. But I'm just a living example of the fact that um, you can come from less than nothing with no life skills, completely socially inept, abused in every possible way. And by the time I attended my 10-year high school reunion, I was bankrupt, divorced twice, and I was a single mother. And I was completely ashamed and suicidal. On the outside, I was pretty and shiny. And then it's taken me 10 more years to rebuild my life. And if you're willing to wait it out, no matter how many years it takes, there it's worth it. Your life's going to be amazing. You just have to make little choices every single day in the direction that you want to head towards, and have patience with yourself. Having patience with yourself is the biggest thing. That's the best thing you could possibly do for yourself and for your family. So I really hope that this interview has added value to not just your food life, but your thought life and every other area of your life. And I'm grateful and honored to be able to share my story with the world, and hopefully encourage some people along the way. And reach out to me on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or email or website. I'm sure Kendra will have everything listed. You can find me at athenamoberg.com. So that's about
Yeah.
it.
Athena, thank you so much for that. I love what you said, that you said, you can't say it enough, that your highest potential is on the other side of your lowest point. So much truth in that. That is awesome. It doesn't make it any easier, but it's still awesome. And there's the hope that we hang on to. And also having that patience with ourselves. So this has been, I've loved this. I have chills when you were saying that, and I want to give you a virtual hug through the screen. So,
Virtual hug.
yeah, armpits. Um, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. My Friday evening. It's been an awesome way to start the year. Thank you so much. I'm sure there'll be many more conversations to come. And for those listening, I hope this inspired you to know that you're not alone. The whole point again of this is that we're real people, real women connecting with each other, opening up about things that we don't always talk about, or sometimes hard to talk about, so that we know we're not alone, we're more connected, and that through that community we move on this journey together. So would love to hear from you who have listened. Reach out to Athena. I can't believe this is the first time you're talking about this, because you seem like a complete open book to me. So this is so freaking cool. But yeah, find Athena on Twitter, Facebook, athenamoberg.com. She's very easy to find because it's like, what was that British saying? It does what it says on the tin. So when you find Athena Moberg, this is Athena that you just saw. um, and also, if you're listening and you're not part of our Facebook community already, Love Food, Love Life, you're more than welcome to come. We have conversations like this within the group virtually. We have random dance parties because I'm a firm believer moving your body. It like gets you out of your head into your body, release the shame, and other cool, fun, crazy, sometimes boring stuff. So come join us there. And yeah, we'll be talking soon, Athena. This is awesome.
Wonderful. I'll stay on after we're not live anymore. I'll stay in the green room with you.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right.
Uh,
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.